Hello, everyone. Welcome to JSM Impact Conversations. I am really thrilled to be here because today we will talk about something really important. We will talk about sustainability, but we will keep it real and we will keep it authentic. We need to challenge our thinking, and today we will really delve into how we can challenge our thinking to make sure sustainability is becoming something which is more than a risk mitigation tool. So the world is on fire, literally and metaphorically. Social, political, economic, and ecological collapses happen at the same time, and all of these crises are intertwined. I was born in 1986, and a Brundtland report came out in 87 when I was 1 year old. So why now am I mentioning my age? Not because I want to tell you that I'm an ancient dinosaur, but also I want to underline the importance of definitions don't help. So we keep reusing and we keep repeating the same definition that was defined 37 years ago. But apparently, our logic is not aligned with what it should really mean. Number one is the foundations of our thinking are based on continuous improvements and efficiency-driven philosophies. Number two, social sustainability is not sufficiently understood nor researched. And number three, environmental sustainability is understood in terms of improving competitive advantage and mitigating operational and compliance risks. So our thinking needs to be challenged. But also, these things are quite difficult to communicate and explain because audiences are diverse and they are changing all the time. Also, what I'm realizing is now, especially young generations, they challenge Western-centric, assumption-based and imposed rules and definitions, but also they challenge binaries and divisive language when we talk about sustainability. So it is getting quite important to understand that our thinking, but also our methods of communication should be challenged and improved. Today, we will discuss all these things, and I couldn't think of a better person to discuss these things than my good friend Simon Okwir. Simon is a researcher and lecturer at Uppsala University in Sweden, and he holds a double degree European Commission PhD. It was called EDIM, European Doctorate of Industrial Management. So you can know so many things about Simon in his professional life, but I will tell you what you don't know about Simon. Simon is a friend of mine, and I'm really honored to call Simon my friend because he is one of the most inclusive and kind individuals that can exist in today's world. I know Simon quite well, and for the last 12 years, we have been involved in many things together. And I will tell you one thing, Simon is a person that uses the act of empathy and kindness. So to challenge our thinking and our teaching philosophies and also epistemic issues, I couldn't think of a better person to discuss these things than Simon. So Simon, welcome to JSCM Impact Conversations.
Thank you, Hakan. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for that kind introduction.
Of course,
Yeah.
anytime. So, Simon, I set the context. I explained why these things are challenging and why we should challenge our thinking and the way we communicate things. What do you think?
Well, I think as you rightly said, it's true. It's that as we've seen that most universities have put up this environmental education, which is great to see. And it's very clear that everyone is involved. But what is often unclear is whether these efforts are actually translating our students or our learners to not just to be informed, but to be truly environmentally conscious, to have this social sensibility. And so when, for example, in supply chain management, for example, you find that when we teach our students, it's really not about the theory about sustainability. It's about, making sure that, well, when these students go out, will they be able to make decisions that impact the world? Are they able to choose greener suppliers, for example? So the question I think for all educators right now is to ask a question: are we really training leaders who are empathetic, who are who will embody virtues of ethics, of trust, of justice. And so these kind of issues, I think, are facing a lot of challenges in many education platforms.
I love it.
Mm.
You are accentuating the importance of bringing justice and ethics at the heart of all these conversations to make sure behavioral change will be enacted. And
Right.
also, I have a follow-up question. Also, for those that don't know, Simon is actually an award-winning researcher and lecturer. And last year at Euroma conference, he won the best teaching innovation award. And now I want to talk about your innovation when you teach sustainability. So, Simon, you made me understand one thing. In the classroom, we have a really big and diverse audience. And
Yeah.
I remember you were explaining to me that the way you talk about sustainability is quite customized to cater to that diverse audience. How do you do it?
Yeah, I think maybe just to step a little bit back for our listeners also is that when you go up to read about environmental education in different journals, you will find there are really two perspectives that are being discussed. And one of the perspective is the instrumental perspective, and then you have the other, which is the emancipatory perspective. Now, the instrumental perspective, it aims to treat the environmental education as a means to address these corporate profit-seeking uh, solutions. So it tries to modify the learner's behavior according to some predefined objectives and some quantifiable outcomes. And so this approach, it will assume a linear connection between knowledge, awareness, and behavior. But there is a significant critique against this instrumental perspective, as you said in the beginning, that we need to exercise some caution as educators because it may verge on the borders of indoctrination. So here, educators should tread carefully such approach because it may contradict actually the real reason why the fundamental purpose of education itself. But in contrast to that, you will find that you have this emancipatory perspective, and this centers into the nurturing of autonomy, critical thinking, creating space for dialogue. It
Mhm.
tries to place emphasis on comprehending societal issues. And so this perspective acknowledges the nature of sustainable behaviors and values that we hold as individuals and trying to bring that in a way that it is not to indoctrinate you, but to present you a space that you reflect on it, you dialogue and put it within your heart and put it in your mind and try to become, to be. Now, that's where the whole idea of the sustainability mindset comes in. And I think that's where the whole point starts, that what is a sustainability mindset? Now, there are many definitions out there, but I would like to use the definition of Isabel Rimancosi. And you could see it in three layers. One is that the sustainability mindset, it should have a broad understanding of the ecosystem manifestations. So this means that you should be knowledgeable about the environmental and ecological dynamics and how they interact. But at the same time, it should have sort of an introspective focus on one's personal values and higher self. And this means there's an issue of growth here, self-reflection and personal development. And this is where the idea from doing to being also comes in here. And then after that, the sustainability mindset thinks of it that the actions for the greater good after knowing all this. How do you come up with these altruistic behaviors that can contribute to your community, not just to self or the me, but trying to reach out to the community, to those who are there. So this social sensitivity is the what you consider as an educator to sort of impact your learner or an individual. But then also the other thing is that before we go into your question is that there is something with our classrooms today, as you said. Our classrooms are offering teaching of sustainability on really on the surface level. And you may see this tendency in this using overly sentimental, feel good content, these catchy slogans, the images. This is the whole idea about that. when we look at the environmental education, instead of digging into often the uncomfortable debates or uncomfortable realities of sustainability, students are sometimes given these cute recycling games and generic save the planet messages. But what we have noticed over the years is that we can create this illusion in the classroom. We can actually talk to students about sustainability, but as they disengage from the classroom, they leave those things there. And what we as educators is that we don't know what students actually hold after leaving the classroom. Have we made an impact? Uh, and when it comes to supply chain management, for example, you will find that it's a field that has a very direct impact on professional behavior. This is why when we talk about teaching sustainability on diverse audiences, it's very, very important that we know our students. What do they believe in?
Mhm.
So in this project, we sent a survey to our students, and we wanted to know them on an individual level. What do they hold? What values do they hold when it comes to environment, sustainability, but also how much do they know about supply chains? And we came up with three types of students when we teach sustainability. The first obvious one is what we call the advocate. Now, for these students, it was evidently seen that they have integrated these eco-friendly practices in their lifestyle. They prioritize mindful consumption, and some of them are actively engaged in spreading this environmental awareness, and they do this, they show their lifestyle to everyone, and some of them, they have a very strong commitment to this work, minimalistic lifestyle, and so forth. And now the question you want to ask: how did this individual become like that? At what point did they transform their life to be like that? The opposite of that is the skeptic. So these were students who were having alternative views, and they need more information about the environment because they believe that this environmental issue is a politicized movement, and they have their own views as well. These students tend to cite more work from the anti-climate movements, for example, the climate denial movements. And I think they are skeptic because we are at the university, they want to know more, and they are more curious. So in the classrooms, it was actually between the most debates were between the advocates and the skeptics, because these were the sort of the minority. But what surprised us, Hakan, in this project is that we found a middle. There was a type of student whom we call the prosaic. And these were the students who have accepted the ordinary. This is the I don't care mindset. Now, here the word prosaic is borrowed from the art literature, and it is this appeal that you have this straightforward thinking, you lack imagination and excitement. So, this student here is here to attend the course in supply chain, read the literature, do exam, and move on. So they lack this creativity, the sense of wonder. They are in routine, they are locked in the routines of the university. They don't have purpose. They don't feel any excitement to come even in this course to see equations on the blackboard. This was the majority. They are very unimaginative, it's dull, and it's uninspiring. They don't want even to talk about sustainability. It's overly, it has become a cliche word. So this was very interesting for us to see. And when we show the statistics here, you will see that on one hand you have the skeptic, that very few, 20%, you have the other green students, and then the prosaic almost take almost 80% of the classroom. And so our idea was that, okay, how can we then uh, transform this? How can we do this? And so this, I think, is very important, not just even in the classrooms. If you also talk to maybe your friends and family, or maybe in professional setup, it's very important to first, know what do they believe in, what do they hold. Yeah, so I think that's how I can answer this question.
It's just really great and really inspirational. Also, I love the fact that you actually not only challenge the underlying conditions around the philosophy in our thinking, but also you somehow redefine the purpose of being in the classroom. And I also like the fact that you are really reinforcing emotional attachments between the students and the concepts that we are trying to teach and expose. And here also you underlined one concept from doing to being. I want
Mm.
to go deeper because it is really, really important. And I know that actually you are using lots of creative and innovative tools to accelerate that transition. So can you explain to us that transition from doing to being and how do you activate that circle?
Right, yeah. So in this project, we have conducted an ethnographic study for 2 years, and we have developed a framework which we call from doing to being. And if we step back now, you will find that when an individual or a student possess these qualities of prosaic forms, this straightforward thinking, I don't care mindset, they don't understand these systematic issues, it is also a moment there that they lose a sense of wonder around them. It's very hard to look at the systematic issues and ecological or global supply chains. And ultimately, such a person loses a sense of wonder, but also a sense of gratitude. And so, in developing a sustainability mindset, is to try to allow this individual to wonder. And one way to do that is to wander through the beautiful and through the artistic material. And we know from psychology literature that, of course, art therapy, I think you are a collector of art, you know this, that in psychology, art therapy is a very well established concept. But also we know that through the literature of personality and personhood traditions in the early Enlightenment, you will find that it is documented that good art has an intrinsic value. So it is not just a form of getting pleasure or possession, but the radiance of beauty and the good that good art has can empower an individual to reach a state of being to extinguish all these forms of prosaic that inhibit us. And so when students are given this opportunity to create artistic impressions alongside their academic work, they sort of step back from facts, they begin to weave new meanings. So for example, in a group of four, they reflect on the supply chain phenomena, they contemplate on it, they try to connect the dots, and so they start to reconstruct pieces by moving from concrete facts to abstract truth. And so they express this in a very artistic form. So what we did in this project, we asked the students, find a phenomena that you're interested in supply chain. This is the scientific part, and this is of your choice. Find an artistic form, and they had many choices to choose from. They had poetry, art, they could make a song, they could make a painting, they could use a generative AI, theater, and so forth. So they were to find a phenomena they were passionate about and try to raise that and present it in a static form. And from what we saw, this created sort of that's what the learning really was not about the final part, but it was in the process when they met and they discussed, for example, fast fashion, and they looked at, so for example, like one group created went into the media and it tried to find all the scandals that have happened with the fast fashion, and they created colors of different clothes and different garments, and they called that, for example, colors of hope. You see, so they are looking at the epidemic, the catastrophes that have happened through the garment industry, but they don't focus on the bad part, but they call it the focus on hope. So they are creating sort of a new world that they haven't seen. And that's what we could see also in their scientific report. They are creating solutions, but these solutions are also grounded in empathy, in kindness, in understanding. And so this framework, if maybe I could uh, summarize it, you could see this framework on a transformatory journey. So it is, you could see it also as a therapeutic model, and it has three stages. The first phase is what we call the conceptual phase. And this is the point where real stories and real narratives come into play. In this course, we selected some stories and narratives for an individual to engage with. So it could be a story about the Suez Canal, for example. It could be a story about the Panama Canal, how governments came together and partitioned this uh, sea or ocean. And it can be also a story on consumption. It could be a story on the abuse of workers in supply chain, for example, the ones you work with, Hakan. And so this provided a space for these students to reflect about this. And then when they come into class, we have a discussion. We have silent moments to reflect. And this is what we called from concrete enlightenment. And then they start to think critically about the relationship between man, corporations, and nature. And it's really about breaking the open assumptions and sparking those aha moments, in the classroom. And through psychology also, because we tested this through psychology, and it's a the cognitive presence here is the strongest in this at this stage. The individual task is to help them build this analytical foundation they need, uh, to question the assumptions they hold about nature and progress. So those prosaic students, this is where they are hooked. They start to say, aha, but why did they have to kill so many people while building the Suez Canal? Or why did they have to, do this? Couldn't they find all? So they start to engage in the debate, and you could see that in the classroom. So from the conceptual shift, we move to the exploration stage, and this is where the concrete expression of their art exhibition and their scientific part comes into play here. The students begin to connect to the course content, but as they connect to the content, they also detach from facts. They connect to supply chain in a way that they try to not just be intellectual, but they become also deeply rational, but also deeply humane. So, and because it is a collective class project, they are also learning from their peers. How did you approach it? Which problem did you choose? So this social presence and the learning from each other, this is the phase which is between self and the community. And then there was sort of like a democratization of new values. And so we saw that by engaging these different artistic forms, students started to transcend this hunger of getting a grade. I want to pass this assignment. I want, the me. So this hunger significance and this focus on self gratification. So they start to really have a purpose. They really detach from the this idea of just simple measures on sustainability, and they really focus on their problem and they try to solve it. And so according to psychology, we see that this phase strengthens the social identity formation and tends to foster this pro-social behavior. The final stage, which I think uh, will have an impact, is what we call the embodying. This is when they transitioned from doing to being. And this is where it is also a relationship between self and nature. And here there were emotions actually, because we created what we call space for sharing. So they could share by writing a reflection report. They could share through, um, emotional sharing circles, we called them. Some of them wrote letters to the future self. They are writing a letter to someone to be, someone who is going to be a supply chain manager. How can I write to myself? And they write to themselves in a way they encourage this attunement, the inner grounding. Here is the trying to tie the brain of empathy, compassion, and bring this moral motivation. And this was the moment we saw impact, because some of them went to social media to talk about what they have been doing. Some of them started campaigning for student environmental days at the campus. We had what we call environmental hour, where we invited supply chain managers to come and listen, and they had a debate around these topics. And so in short, I could say that this framework we are trying to use is try to move these ideas from the head to the heart and also to habit, which is ultimately the doing.
Wonderful. Wow. Simon, thank you so much for sharing all these very impactful insights. Because also, what I love the most is actually we are really creating the future here. Also, you are empowering your students to think of how or who they want to become, and then we will work backwards. Then, how we can actually reach that end state that we are envisioning. And we have so much to actually learn from this method. And I will leave all the links to the description. So please, everyone, get in touch with Simon, ask questions, engage, and also adopt this methodology in your classroom and beyond. Simon, thank you so much. This has been
Thank you
one.
so much. Thank you so much, and looking forward to see you in Milan.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And we
yeah,
will be in Milan at the Euroma conference this
yeah.
summer in June 2025. And this is just the beginning. The intention of these conversations is to create a holistic dialogue and holistic social dialogue. And this is just the beginning. So hopefully we will all stay together and we will find creative ways to make sure sustainability will become something which is bigger than just an empty word. And never stop loving art. So thank you so much also for mentioning the importance of art. So thank you so much, Simon.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, everyone. We will see you at the next episode, JSCM Impact Conversations, and stay well and keep loving art.
Bye.
Bye.